for all citizens. Amen.
Item number 4, I need a motion to adopt the agenda minus item 10A, which I will move to next Thursday's full board meeting. Can I get that motion? Commissioner Kraft, supported by Commissioner Drollet.
Bob, just very quickly, we're gonna, so we're removing 10E, which is the MDOT correspondence, and also.
Oh, I'm sorry, 11.
Yeah, 11, but we're we got that correspondence also. I just say we should.
I'm sorry, let's
do
move.
10 and 11, I think, because they both relate to each other.
Yes, good
And then
idea.
we'll deal with them both next week. Good?
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
we, you good with that language?
We're all good.
Leon, great.
Yeah.
Please vote.
Okay, thank you.
No, you get a comp.
Motion passes 10-0. Item number 5, approval of minutes dated March 13th, 2019. Need a motion? Motion by Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Haw. Please vote. Motion passes 10-0. Item number 6, public participation. Hey, members of the public wishing to speak, you have 5 minutes on items on this agenda. So that will, I think what you're going to need is probably second public participation, Mr. Costello. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we're going to close public participation. Item number 7, there's no correspondence from the Office of County Executive. Item number 8, 8A, Department Recommendations, 2019 Macomb County Equalization Report. Ms. Seeloff. We'll need a motion to approve. All right, Commissioner Brown, supported by Commissioner Drollet. Carry on.
In the middle of the mic. There you go. There you go.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is my favorite meeting to come to you guys. That means that I am done for this year. And I have some good news for you. Assessments are up 7.21%, taxable values up 5%, so that's some good numbers for us this year. As usual, I have a couple of items that I would like to just point out in the report. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look through it. I know it's a lot of numbers, but I'm going to hit some of the highlights. And let's see if we did this right. On your packet, page 24, there should be an SEV versus taxable value line graph. Did we get it? Thank you so much, Mike. So this is a real neat representation of where we came from in 2005 and where we are today. And one of the things that I wanted to point out, if you didn't look at this real closely, is we are back, our SEV and our taxable is back to where we were in 2005. So back when the crash and the recession happened, everybody was kind of predicting approximately 10 years. So right now we're at the 14-year mark, which isn't too bad, not too far off the mark. However, if you take a look at where we crested, which was 2007, back then we did not have personal property industrial exemptions. We did not have veterans exemptions. So if you put those back in, we're probably close to where we were when we crested, which was 12 years ago. So that's good news. So we were real close to that 10-year prediction. So I just wanted to point that out. But that is a 7.21 increase in our assessed values and a 5% increase in our taxable. The next item I wanted to point out to you is on your packet, page 26. These are the values that I'm bringing forth to you today, recommending that you equalize as our county equalized values. And once that process has been done, then I will upload these to the state, and they will, as long as they pass everything at the state level, they will become Macomb County's state equalized values. So those 4 pages there do a breakdown of the assessment to the county equalized value. All of the units came in where they were supposed to, between 49 and 50%. We assess our properties at 50% of true cash value. And so this year, we did not have any units requiring a factor in any of the property classes. Page 30 in your packet begins the summary of the local unit valuation, so you can see a nice breakdown, parcel counts, assessed ratio, true cash value, and then where we are going to hopefully county equalize them at. Page 59 is the summary of the equalized value changes, and again, we had a 5.9% market increase this year in the values. So when we did our studies back in the fall, we gave the local units a target to hit, and that was about 6%, and they've hit it. And then we also had 1.24% increase with new construction. So those northern communities still have quite a few building permits going on, a lot of residential permits going on in those areas, not so much south of Hall Road, but north of Hall Road for sure. Macomb and Shelby Township are still pretty high in their permits. And then the overall assessment change at the bottom is 7.21. On page 63 is just a summary of the average residential true cash value per unit, and then the average residential true cash value for Macomb County. So the average residential value, market value, is 194. That's pretty good, okay? And then the very final thing that I wanted to point out is the taxable value change. And this gives you a little bit better breakdown. It shows you what 18 was and what 19 was. I'm sorry, this is on page 64. It gives you the net change and then the percent change. The cities changed at 4.78%. The townships at 5%. So an overall increase of 4.93. And again, you can see north of Hall Road had a slightly higher rate of taxable value change, but again, that's because they had a little bit more new construction, and typically the south of Hall Road is where a lot of the industrial exemptions are happening in the personal property, and so that cuts back on that. And at this time, if you guys have any questions on any of that, I'd be happy to answer those.
Commissioner Myjack.
Thank you, Chair. Kristen, thank you very much for coming here today. Just a question, the personal property tax exemption that took place, the voters that voted to eliminate that.
Right.
How are we doing on that? Are we being made whole from the state?
Yes, right now, in fact, I'm actually working on the personal property reimbursement report downstairs. The first year was kind of interesting because the way the law was written, they have to disperse or reimburse everything that is collected. The first year, and it was intended for essential services only. The first year, they collected so much money that they ended up reimbursing like everything. And so now, as we're getting closer to the end of that falling off cycle, we're not having that much of an increase in the amount that they are collecting. 2023 is when everything will have rolled off, so all of the industrial. But again, this is an exemption that every year must be applied for. And they have to fill out the form, and if they don't fill out the form, then it goes on the ad valorem roll. And if they do fill out the form and the exemption goes through and the state puts it out on the ESA site, if the applicant doesn't go out there and either update it or pay when they're supposed to, then it drops back off and it gets put on the ad valorem roll. So I still think we'll have some industrial values, because there are a few out there that refuse to do that. Refuse to apply for the exemption, and you can't make somebody do it. So we'll still probably have some stragglers out there, but for the most part, everybody will be rolling off as of 2023.
And through you to Steve, if I can ask you, Steve, with her numbers that came out, what does that mean for the budget? Percent taxes or dollar amount of tax revenue that we're bringing in through our budget? Are we ahead, below, or at where we projected?
Oh, somewhere around an additional 700,000. So property values went up 4.93%, as Kristen indicated. We are also subject to a Headley rollback again this year of 0.9922.
Okay.
So that brings us down to about 4.1. We budgeted an increase of 3.5. That extra 0.6% is worth somewhere between 700 and 750,000, depending on property value, IFTs and Renaissance zones and other things.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve, and thanks again for a good presentation, Kristen. Appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Seeloff, for your excellent work that you do for the county and for producing this report. I'm confused about just two numbers that seem to be different to me. One is on the page 24 where you had that line graph with the state equalizer, and you had mentioned that indicates in the taxable value a 5% increase. It was a 5 point something or
Right.
5 flat.
Yep.
Okay. And then on page 64, there's the ad valorem taxable value change, the grand total showing at 9.32.
Excellent catch.
Really?
Excellent catch. And I have an explanation. And
Oh.
the difference is ad valorem values include Renaissance zone values and PILTs, but when we are talking about tax levies, we don't levy on Renaissance zone values and PILT properties. So the difference in the graph, that is without the Renaissance zone properties and PILTs. The back page is ad valorem, so it would include those.
So is it mostly PILTs or mostly Renaissance zones?
Mostly Renaissance zones.
Like Scamazon, where they don't pay taxes or whatever.
Scamazon.
Right. Where we
I'm not
just give
familiar with that
away
property.
corporate welfare type stuff. Okay.
Not
So
familiar with that one.
that does explain that. I appreciate it. So, and then according to Steve, that means we have $700,000 possibly more than we anticipated projecting into next budget. Correct. Okay, so we only need 1/4% now to come up with the money to fund that critical life-saving equipment for the Comtech. So that's great news. Thank you very much.
I know, I'm surprised it took that long to get to that. So for those of us, or maybe me, that don't understand what Renaissance and PIL and all that other stuff actually means, since you brought it up, what does that mean?
So a PILT property is a payment in lieu of taxes. We have to maintain the value of that property, but they don't pay a tax. Like, they don't pay the same tax. They make a payment in lieu of a tax bill. And it's whatever determined in the paperwork and all of that. Renaissance zones are areas where there may be some rehab. It's an incentive to block off this grouping of parcels and say, hey, we're going to freeze the values here, and you're not going to be taxed on that additional value and what have you. It's kind of like a TIFA, it's kind of like a DDA, it's just a little bit different, but we definitely do not do rollback calculations for the county millage using Renaissance zones. They just pay a little bit differently.
Good, thank you. I don't see any of the speakers, so that being said, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes 11-0. Item number 9, presentations. A bond update by Finance Director Steve Smeagol. Need a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Kraft, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Finance Director Smeagol. Floor is yours. Yes. We see you so much, you're like a commissioner.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I was asked to provide some information to the board on the outstanding bond issues of the county. Wasn't exactly sure what you were looking for, so this is pretty brief. If you have any more additional information that you're looking for, just let me know and I'll provide that. So on the first page of this 4-page packet of information, you have a list of the 7 outstanding issues as of December 31st. Just under $283 million of outstanding debt. Those 7 issues were originally issued for a total of $349 million, and you can see they're in ascending order by the year of maturity. We have one that fully matures this year. It's a bridge refunding bond from 2012, and of course the longest maturity that we have is the retiree healthcare bonds from 2015, and those mature in 2035. The next page in the presentation is simply a maturity schedule by the individual issues. So you have those issues, you can see them, you can see when those fall off, and what the total principal payments are by year and what the remaining balance is all the way through 2035. Again, and that's when all the existing debt is paid off. And the third page may be maybe the more interesting of the 4 pages. This is a schedule of total debt service, including interest payments, again, by year. And you'll see what I've highlighted in yellow are years in which there are fairly significant reductions in our debt service payments. As those bonds mature, you can see in 2023, our total debt service reduces by about 2.2 million. Then again in 2026 by about another 1.6 million. And then things stay fairly static until 2031, and that's when the central campus bonds are paid off. They're actually paid off in 2030. So our debt service drops by 3.7 a year, beginning in 2031, and then again is fairly static until 2036, which is the year that the retiree health care bonds are paid off. Well, let me restate that. 2035 is the year that the retiree health care bonds are paid off. So we have a total reduction beginning in 2036 of another $18 million a year. And then the last page is just more of a graphical presentation, a line graph of our debt service payments with little bubbles explaining again which bond issue retirements are leading or contributing to those decreases. So kind of picture's worth 1,000 words, so to speak. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I don't know if you have any questions relative to this. Again, I can, provide any more information you want. I do have a little bit of good news. It's probably not overly significant, but the 2012 bridge refunding bonds, we have one maturity left. That issue matures this year. I learned yesterday from Standard & Poor's that they are actually upgrading the credit rating on that one issue to a AAA. The remaining 6 remain at AA+. I don't have the copy of the final report yet. The reason for that is years ago, Commissioner Brown Commissioner Myjack probably remembers 2 years ago in the early 2000s, we did a bridge program. And it was a $30 million program in conjunction with the Road Commission at the time. The Road Commission contributed $15 million of cash. The county contributed $15 million by issuing bonds. The primary security for those bonds were gas and weight tax as it was issued. Now, there was never really any intention that the Road Commission or gas tax would pay for the county portion. The general fund always paid for the debt service on that issue. There were 2 issues, one for 10 million, one for 5. But if we ever got into a situation where the general fund couldn't pay the debt service, we would have had to go to the roads for some reimbursement. So the credit agencies, or Standard & Poor's in particular, apparently came out with some new rating criteria for transportation bonds, and they consider the security of gas and weight tax to be a better pledge than general full faith and credit. So for what it's worth, it's one issue, it matures next year, and our credit rating stays the same as far as I know on the remaining 6 issues. So a little bit of good news.
All right, we'll take it. Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, real quick on that. By going to a AAA, do we save some money on
No.
that? Oh.
Only because it only pertains to Michigan Transportation Fund bonds.
Okay, so if we go
if
AAA,
we
but
were to
it's just,
issue more Michigan taxable, transportation bonds,
Right.
potentially, but we don't save any money because if we refund one of our remaining 6 issues, those are still rated at AA+.
okay,
So,
okay. So my question is, first I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with me a couple times to digest this information. That is very generous of your time, and you're very thorough in making this presentation. And, what I was trying to understand is what happens if we don't put a millage on the ballot for the jail, or if we put it on the ballot and it fails, what happens at that point? And I was trying to get a grasp of that. And based on some of our conversations and the work you did here, it appears that we'd have to wait 5-6 years then for enough money to be freed up that we could potentially build a jail using some of that retired bond, the money currently is used to pay bonds. So it'd probably be about a 5 or 6 year wait.
Or more, yeah, out to 2026.
Yeah, so 2026, potentially that long of a wait. So I guess I just wanted to make the rest of the board aware that, you had taken the time to do that, and I appreciate it. And that is, there is a potential, if the bond, if it fails, if it's on the ballot, or if it doesn't go on the ballot, what would be Plan B if the voters reject it? And it would be a 6 year wait, and that factors in putting about $3 million a year into the jail to keep it running as it is. So that would be, we're currently putting, what'd you say, about $2 million a year or so in the jail?
Somewhere in that neighborhood,
In that
depending on
neighborhood.
the
So
year. We had a better year last year, so to speak. but
Yeah, so the average has been.
Some years are bad, some years are not so bad.
If that average goes up to 3, we could potentially prop up the jail for 5, 6 years and then build using existing tax revenues. Thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to thank you too, Steve, for doing this. Leon had brought this up to me a couple of weeks ago after the jail presentation at my committee, and I want to thank Commissioner Drollet too for doing this too, just to give us a different perspective, because we want to make sure we understand, what options are, and thanks for doing it, Steve. Really
Okay, you're
appreciate
welcome.
that. Good information,
Appreciate
and
it.
thanks for getting it, Leon, too. Take care.
Punch the speaker.
That's it.
I have a question.
Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Speaking of the jail, are we going to have that schedule for how much we've put into the jail over the last 15 years by year? Yes.
I didn't know, okay, I have that.
If you
I thought
send
maybe
it-
it had been provided, but I have
I
that,
don't
for the
think-
last 5 or 10 at least.
The last 10 years, so we could see
Yeah.
how much we put in by year. If there's a school of thought this is maybe just cheap just to keep putting in $1 million a year than come up with $400 million perhaps. So I want to see how much we paid in. So, all right, thank you.
I do not have any other speakers. Steve, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file. Please vote. Motion passes 12-0. Let's see, we will skip to item 12, new business. Any commissioners with new business? Hold on a second. I don't see any. Commissioner Drollet, would you mind, I don't know if I missed the meeting where you were talking about what you just talked about. Will you give me a quick rendition of what you were just speaking of with him to, as far as not bonding or millaging for the jail, but what you were.
The quick rendition is if we were to borrow $320 million, or $330 million instead of $400 million to build a jail, and that it requires a certain amount of debt payment per year, even if we're just paying the debt service for the first few years. So what we have to do is pay the debt service for the first few years until enough bonds have been retired that we can start paying the principal.
Okay.
And Steve says that essentially it would be about 2025, 2026 till we could start making the interest payments. We could borrow the money, make the interest payments, and then as more bonds get retired, make principal payments that are larger toward the end.
Okay.
So essentially, if we wait 5 or 6 years, we could build a jail. Now, granted, the jail costs will go up with inflation, but so does our tax revenue and so forth.
Theoretically.
Yep, so in theory, that could potentially be a Plan B if no additional taxes are increased, that we would have to wait 5 or 6 years, continue to prop up the existing jail with an estimated $3 million a year in infrastructure, to keep propping up. Currently, it's about $2 million a year that we've been average spending. So I'm assuming that we're going to have to spend more to keep the older jail going.
And that, and I just want to say that assumes that there's no other need for any other bonds in the interim, correct?
That's correct, that we would essentially be anticipating that would be the bond issue, and we would have to, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, I just wanted to get a little better understanding about it. That'd be good. Any other new business? Clerk Miller, any other new business?
In light of the equalization report, I have a $700,000 emergency expenditure out there.
Yes. Next Wednesday, next. Next. All right, I have some new business. Our Green Schools program at the MISD is this Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, and that's our board's Green School program, and it's loaded with tons of, all the schools in the community, basically, and all the kids. I strongly urge you to show up. It's quite an event. So please try to make some time for that. Any other new business? Seeing none, we are going to move to public participation. Well, let me just give one more thing with new business. I had talked to people from the executive's office and Mr. Kesto about when we were going to talk about this item, the Mound Road turnaround. I mentioned that we would be looking at taking it off the table next Thursday, so I apologize to him that it kind of snuck by me on today's meeting. So I just want, he was in the area. I mentioned that you could speak at public participation to it because you won't be around next Thursday. So any members of the public wishing to speak? Just give us your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you,
or
Mr.
so.
Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Clint Kesto. I live in Oakland County, have been in family business in Macomb County for over 30 years, been part of the state legislature, worked on a lot of these issues that you spoke about in your committee hearing, as well as on the roads. In this particular matter, Representative Farrington, in last year's budget, which would take effect October 1st of 2018, in terms of the funding, put in this earmark project on Mound Road, south of 15 Mile, as indicated in the letter and that you know about. And I just wanted to highlight a few things about the project and why it's important. Number one, we have a crisis with our roads. They're crumbling. On Mound Road, I'd have to look at the actual records, but it seems like every other year there is a construction project that closes the lanes or closes a whole side where people have to travel either on the eastbound side or the westbound side for a significant period. And it happens in memory every other year. And I understand that when we got this project in there, in order to give some relief for citizens, for community members, for business owners, that this would be a special project so you don't have to cross over going northbound on 15 Mile, but you can actually make a southbound turn from that portion further north. And based on that, I spoke to Representative Farrington, who is a representative from the district. She had a special fund earmarked for that project. Around the same time, as you all know, there became this Grand Mound Road project with federal funds and state funds and tons of money. And looking at how big Mound Road is, you know, all the way down on the south end to all the way down on the north end, and as all of you know, they take these in phases as far as a large-scale project because of how the roads will be closed in order to tear the whole thing up and redo it. And who knows at this point, because the engineering has not been done, whether they're going to cross into the median, take other spaces in the right-of-way, expand the lanes, what type of pavement they're going to use, where they're going to start, that this special project, at least I advocate to you, is important in order to get done sooner rather than later. And I understand that the questions are, how do we use this money? Should we lump it into that Grand Mound Road project? And I'll say to you, that project is going to be one long-term in terms of engineering and reconstruction. And based on what I've just said about the citizens and the business owners and the employees at all those businesses getting some relief, I would think that it would be important at least to give some relief with our crumbling roads. Even if the governor is out there calling for gas tax increases to fix the roads. Her slogan, fix the damn roads. This is a project that is specifically for Mound Road, for Macomb County. We went and got some signatures to see where there would be support, and in a matter of 3 weeks, there's over almost close to 400 signatures just from the people that are in that area, working, living, business owners, employees. And I know the concern, and Commissioner Myjacks had some concerns about the Department of Transportation and how these funds could be used. And a letter was sent back, and it indicated, for all intents and purposes, that the project was in consult with the Michigan Department of Roads, or MCDR, and that the specifics were earmarked for this project, And that essentially, reading this, it says, if the Director of Roads or the Department of Roads for Macomb County decides to do it in 2020, that's fine with MDOT, instead of doing it in 2019. Of course, I would tell you that 2019 is better. There's construction every other year. Get these people some relief. That being said, I think it's prudent, it's important to allow the director to be able to come to you all or to figure out how they're going to put this in sooner rather than later. Now, about the Mound Road project, and people were looking for guarantees. Well, if there's a guarantee that this is going to stay there, is there a guarantee that it's going to be removed? What do we know about it? Well, we don't know, because the engineering isn't done. But I will say this, and common sense would say this, that if it's there, it will remain there. And if it isn't, maybe it won't be. This was a project worked on to say, here you go, Macomb County, here's $300,000 to fix a portion of your roads, and you know that they will. It won't just be confined in a narrow space of a turnaround, but certainly you know that at least some of those roads in ingress and egress will also be repaired. And so I think that looking at it overall, that we can't look at saying, okay, this $300,000 is going to be wasted, because it will not be. It will give some relief to those employees that will continue to drive on Mound Road instead of leaving, going somewhere else. It'll save on time, it'll allow those businesses to thrive that have been seeing construction year after year after year after year after year, and we'll see it again with the big project. And frankly, even at that area, it may be a few years before the construction comes up. So I think let's get this project done. I appreciate the time, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, and members of the commission. Happy to take any questions. I know that it's kind of us, was here just to testify in the public comment portion. But
Yes, so what we'll do is, we're going to be done with this meeting in a minute. If anyone wants to talk to Mr. Kesto, the meeting will be over. You can talk to him right after this meeting. So that being said, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you for your time.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Fred? Hello? Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Need a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Drollet, Commissioner Kraft, please vote. Meeting adjourned.